Welcome to the Swing Trading Cycles channel. We're going to do an update on uranium today. It's March 4th, 2023. The broader market may have just made a daily cycle low. If we're looking at CCJ right here, it looks like it probably did as well. So this looked like a daily cycle low, but we got an undercut low instead, and also a new daily cycle high at that. So we're talking about a 38-day rally and then 42. So we have a daily cycle low on day 42 potentially, and this was day 38. Obviously a nasty move lower before making this higher high and then this undercut low. Now that would put us on day 2, 3, 4, 7 as of Friday, so opening day 8 on Monday. So that's the lay of the land. So that means it bottomed ahead of the market, because if you think about, let's just look at SPX really quickly. That only just bottomed, like literally Friday was day 1. Right? You can see that this was your undercut low. So it's similar to CCJ in terms of the broader structure, where you had what looked like a daily cycle low and then an undercut low. So that, and obviously we can have that same kind of thing happen again, right? In the same way that this looked like it was going to hold and then it didn't, this could look like it's going to hold and not. We'll have to see. So that's good to just know the general trajectory of the market, because that's obviously going to impact things greatly. So going back to CCJ, if we're on day 7 of the daily cycle, what does that mean for the weekly cycle? Well, let's see. So this is the rally we've had so far, and what that would mean potentially, so that's week 8, that's week 10. So we have our high on week 8 so far, and what the bull case here would be that we're going to get follow through, and at the very least we're going to retest this high and maybe make a new one. That's 9, 10. So that would be week 11 next week. What I'd say is you're getting later in the daily cycle, or excuse me, the weekly cycle, but you're also relatively early in the daily cycle. So if you think about that, at day 7, if we have a daily cycle that is not super long, like this last one that we just had, to kind of balance things out, let's say it's like 25 days, that gets you to your low around the end of March. And so that would be week, what week is that? That would be week 14. And so you could see a world where we continue to rally into the, like what you would expect is we continue to rally into the daily cycle high. We expect the daily cycle low, let's say the end of March. And so this weekly cycle rally continues to run, right? So this is going to be week 11 on next week. So then week 12, maybe we get our high on week 12, and then we get a little bit of a decline into the daily cycle low. So this tells you we could very easily exceed this week 8 high, and that gives you an easy target to kind of think about. And so I suspect most other names are going to look very similar to this. Actually, let's look at the monthly chart before we move on. So the monthly is green. That's always good to know about. Thinking about downside risk, you want to stay above last month's low, which was 26.47. And what we're trying to do here is take out this monthly high at 29.73, which would correspond with this week 8 high. It's all the same thing. That's the multiple time frame analysis. So I suspect most other names are going to look similar to this, right? So same kind of thing. This thing, everything is trying to make a move. It's trying to trying to rally and say, hey, the weekly cycle rally is not over, right? Like this was just a higher low and we're trying to move higher. That's the bull case. Obviously the bear case is this rolls over into a lower low. Maybe we even get a rally next week, but we can't make a higher high. We end up sort of stalling out a classic double top, if you will. URA also green on the month, but it's at the lower end of the range. So CCJ is outperforming, we can tell. Let's run through these really quickly. I may not be able to go through all of them. So energy fuels. This one looks kind of sick. So we had this low here, this back test that almost failed, but you could say that was a successful back test of this DCL. That's one interpretation. What does the weekly look like? Oof, ugly doji. So at the very least, what we're set up for next week, the open, is clearly an inside week with very clear levels. We're going to have a candle that's going to be inside here somewhere. And so which way does it break out of this cage? So that's a high at $6.96 and a low at $6.40. So about a 50-cent move range. And let's look at what is the monthly chart for uranium fuels. Ooh, this thing is just coiling, waiting for a resolution. Yikes! It's at the bottom end of the range though here. Yikes! That's not the most bullish looking one for sure. What about Denison? This thing had gotten perky and now yikes. Okay, so Denison. If we think about Denison, very clear daily cycle high. This is a pretty clear daily cycle low here. So that is positive, but is it in weekly cycle decline still? That's the question. So day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's day 5. I would expect that we're going to make a higher high above day 3. That's $1.33. We're here at $1.28. So that's actually even decent percentage upside. And if we look at the weekly chart, you can see same story, right? So high on week 8. Is this thing going to be able to make a high above that $1.52? If it can, that's obviously really nice upside from here, percentage terms. And the monthly is green, but we have an upper wick in play. That shouldn't be a problem if the daily cycle rally continues, but we'll have to see. What about UEC? We're under $4 again, we can notice. So this one looks like it made it, like it's on day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So same story, similar story to CCJ. And it's trying to make a higher high above $4.30. So that's a good bit of upside here, coiling on the monthly chart. I mean, wow, look at that, just coiling. What about YCA? I think this thing is starting to move a little bit. So this high it's trying to take out is 428. That's on week 6, and that gives you good odds because week 6 is very early for a weekly cycle high, and so you can easily see this thing doing something like that. I mean, that's really the bull case for all of them. Obviously, the levels are just different for each one. And the monthly is green, and a new high would come into play above 428 on the monthly chart. So that's good to know. This one has definitely just been moving steadily up. What about Elevate Uranium? Daily cycle, very clear daily cycle low back here on February 22nd. And it is now coming up on day 8 on Monday. And you can see the high that this thing needs to get above is 48 cents. That's the high on the weekly chart. So they're all trying to turn this low that we just printed into a higher low on the weekly chart. We'll see which ones succeed. Uroi, same thing. The high it needs to exceed on the weekly is $3. Wow, that's quite a distance from here. What about Next Gen? So Next Gen is on day 5. The high it needs to exceed on the weekly is 511. And again, same story for all of these, just massive coiling on the monthly chart. They are mostly green on the monthly chart, which is helpful, but I mean, it's just an inside month here. And I mean, really inside month for like many months so far, actually. What about Kazatomprom? How's this thing looking? So very feeble. It may have printed a daily cycle low on Thursday, but Friday was just an inside candle. So that was a big range that it printed. So it's got to get outside that range of that big candle. And what is that range? So that's a high of 29.74, a low of 27.32. I know it's hard to get direct exposure to this, but I think this one is a pretty big holding within URNM. So it's going to dictate how that thing is moving. And this was a very bearish daily cycle, it would seem, because that was 20 days. And the whole thing so far has been 46. So left translated, potentially a harbinger of things to come if we look at the weekly and we get rid of that. Oh, so the weekly, right. Weekly made a lower low, but again, it's actually the same pattern. This could set the weekly up to become a swing low and do something like that. That's the bull case. If we can get a daily cycle low. And this one would be behind everything else, which in a way means you'd be able to get in earlier. But it is going to be an inside week next week. So a range of, or to start, a range between 29.74 and 27.32. Let's look at the last few names here. Paladin, same pattern for Paladin. Lower low on this weekly chart. Above 730, above 0.735 is actually a weekly swing low and potentially has a chance to challenge this weekly high at 88 cents. What about Fission Uranium? Ooh, that's a decent candle, but it was a lower low. It's trying to challenge the local high of 70 cents. And finally, we have fission uranium. This one we've kind of been stalking, and it's been going nowhere, and that's okay. So on the daily chart, we can see it's perched up here after this huge move at like 3x, and now it's just consolidating. That's not surprising. This is an ugly double top. So this is a new daily cycle. So this one is actually moving into a daily cycle low after topping out on week 11. So it's obviously a different pattern than most of these. And this is your 10-week moving average here. It's just crossing below. So more downside to come here. Patience is warranted on this one. No reason to really do anything. Look at these upper wicks on the weekly chart. That's just telling you huge profit taking. Sellers coming in and saying, okay, I want to get out above like 35. Call it like 35, 36 cents. Like I want to take profits. I want to realize some gains. That's not, which isn't shocking. In terms of the weekly cycle count, this is your high at week 11 so far. And the question is this a new weekly cycle? Is this going to be a bearish weekly cycle where this is our top? So we've gotten to low, like this becomes our lower high here. Like we could be set up for like several months of decline on this one. And so this is the kind of thing where you set your alerts and you just kind of sit back. Like you don't need to kind of overthink this one or kind of exhaust yourself kind of mentally. And what does this look like on the monthly chart? Yeah, just a red month. So you've got this big monthly candle, which is really just a couple days that created this monthly candle. And then you had this follow through move, nowhere near as big, but now we were just consolidating inside this ginormous range of this red doji candle. So that's a high at 36.50 and a low at 22 cents. That's obviously a huge range. If this thing came down to the 22 area, that would represent a huge buying opportunity. Obviously, that's assuming it holds, and that's what you would want to watch for. So you're maybe not getting in at the bottom. Maybe you get back in at like 25 cents, let's say. That's a lot of cost savings, especially if you, especially thinking about it coming down all the way down from 38 cents. But this is the range to watch. This is the monthly chart. There's no reason why we couldn't chop around in this range for several more months, though, right? Like you can see this thing just kind of doing something like that as it awaits its next kind of move, which could potentially be lower, to be clear. Doesn't have to break out, but this would essentially be a bull flag, charging up for an all-time highs are 92 cents, just for reference. So that's the lay of the land on uranium. We're going to leave it at that. I guess actually before we do, one last thing we'll do is look at the uranium to SPY ratio. How are we looking on this monthly chart? So we are green on the monthly chart, so that is positive. And you can see in terms of the weekly move, still trending up nicely. We did have these 2 down weeks, but now we're kind of reversing. So this tells you if one were inclined to be long something, it would be uranium versus the broader market, theoretically. So we're going to leave it at that. Thanks for watching.